Okay, so let's begin with the top half. So you're here with your parents, it's heaven on earth, all your needs are met, and you're completely safe, you're fed, you're rested, and your tank is full. And when it is, you're ready to go out and explore. You heard me use the example of being at a park and the kid gets up and it goes out and ventures. So the first emotional need is what I call watch me. And watch me is an emotional need where the children want to know that your eyes are on them. Can you recall the times where you were at school or a school event or something and you would look for your parents, where are they? And you're like hoping their eyes were on you. I remember that at Christmas performances and we're singing, I would look along the sea of parents and I would look for mine and I wanted them to see me. And when their eyes were on me and they're delighting and smiling, it just felt so good. And then if they were talking to someone next to them, it was not feeling so good. and the kids go, mommy, mommy, daddy, daddy, look at me, watch me, watch me. And so they're constantly asking you to put your eyes are on them. And that is this emotional need right here. You're observing their experience. Your eyes are on them. If you're doing floor time with your kids, where you're playing with them, we teach parents to be commentators, to say, oh, you're moving the blue car down the road. You're honking, honk, honk. Oh, look at that. And you're saying out loud what they're doing. You're not teaching them, but you're describing out loud what they're doing. Try that with children. It's the most, I always say it's like crack for kids. Like they just gravitate towards you when you do this for them. They love for an adult to be observing their experience and describing that to the child. So here's the tricky thing. When we can't physically watch somebody with our eyes, we're in each other's visual field, we will transition to a mental map where we watch them in our mind's eye. And so that's where it's really important to say, goodbye, I'm going to, because then we can transition to the mind's eye. So like right now, mind's eye. Right now, I am aware my loved ones are, where the people that are closest to me, where they are. I have a little internal GPS system and I know, oh, my daughter is at home, probably done with her homework, watching TV. My son is with his friend. My husband's in the living room. I'm out in our office. I have this little system, and even my friends and my family members, I know where they are and what they're doing roughly. The closer they are to you, you have that knowledge, you have that awareness. But when we don't have that knowledge or that awareness, we begin to feel distressed and agitated. So think about if you are coming home from work and you enter and you expect to see your family at home and you walk in and you're like, hi, I'm home, and nobody's there. And you're like, what's going on? So you kind of wait and maybe you text them and say, hey, where are you? I'm home. That's a cueing. When you text somebody, you're cueing for that need, and there's no response. So then you call them and you're like, hey, where are you? And they don't answer. And then you keep doing this, and now you're really distressed. You're starting to think, did they get in an accident? Did something happen? Like, why are they not here? And then they come home and you're upset and you go, what? Why? Where were you? And they go, well, I already told you, or why are you upset? Or of course I was out here, and they get upset with you because you were upset that you didn't know where they were. So this is a moment where that emotional need did not get met, and that person rejected that emotional need. So also, think about if you are home and your husband is home, or wife or partner, and all of a sudden you hear the door open and close and off they go driving. And you think, where'd they go? They didn't say anything to me. They didn't say goodbye or anything. So you're upset. And that's because we're naturally wired to have that reaction. We're naturally wired to want to have reference of where our village is, where our tribe is. for our own safety. Our survival brain does not like not knowing where our loved ones are. It creates a sense of distress and danger. So if you're in the wild and your child or your loved one went out independently, you didn't know, and they could be in danger of a lion attacking them, a bear, wolves, enemy, neighbors, things like that. And so it creates that danger, that sense of danger for us, even though today we might know that, well, overall it's okay. I'm sure they'll be back. But it does rise a level of distress, whether we want to or not, because our brain is wired for that. So it's very important that we are able to say to our loved ones, goodbye, I'm going here, I'll be back. So when my kids were little, I used to say, Jacob, Sarah, I'm going to my office. I will be home at 3 after school, and I'll see you then. So they were able to make that transition and have a little mental map of where I was. One of the most devastating things I did parenting with my daughter and my son was, I used to think when I dropped them off to daycare, they would protest and cry. And I thought the only way that I could leave was if I snuck out. And so I did that, but it caused them to have incredible anxiety that here I am and there I'm gone. And for that reason, that's probably why they were protesting every time I dropped them off, and why they were very clingy and anxious, was because of that unpredictability. So we want to create that predictability in our relationships and know that it's okay. When I'm working with individuals, they will say things like, I call people and I ask them where they are, but they tell me I'm being too insecure or too controlling. That's typically the language we hear. Too controlling, micromanaging people because you're queuing for this emotional need. And this we want to correct. People aren't necessarily micromanaging you. Some people are very, especially in domestic violence situations, they're very controlling about where you go, what you do, who you see. This is not safe. You don't want to have someone dictate who you can give you, like they have authority about whether you can or can't go, who you see or who you don't see. We are adults in a relationship together. It's interdependent. That's not appropriate. If we respond to that, then we're being like a child to a parent, and that's not appropriate in our adult existence or adult life. So we want to have our own authority in our lives, but be respectful and interactive with others, and just share with them what you have going on. This is also where we create a mental map of the person, meaning that we have information about their inner life. For example, we know what they're excited about. We know what they're scared about. We know what's stressing them, what they're looking forward to, what the big news is going on in their life. We have that privileged information. This communicates that we are really close. Think about if you have someone in your life that got engaged and they said, oh my gosh, I have great news for you. I just got engaged, and you're the first to know. This communicates that you're intimate, you're special, and you're part of their inner circle. But sometimes we don't get that information, and we might learn on Facebook or social media where we have a very close friend and we look and it says, oh, I've got engaged, and all of a sudden you're hurt and you're sad and you're offended. And that happens because deep down we don't realize it, but we have a hidden expectation that we would be the first that they would go to tell. And then we get triggered when that doesn't happen, because the unenforceable rule, so to speak, the requirement, the contract that you have for that relationship says that because we are close, I should be the first person you tell that to. And what we're learning in emotional sobriety is to release those hidden expectations and those unenforceable contracts and really meet life on life's terms. So there's two parts of that I want to point out to you. One is it's understandable why you're upset. That's why I'm identifying this to you. We want to have self-compassion for it. It is upsetting when you find out that information because it's not working in the way that we're wired to have it work. But at the same time, because we are adulting when we practice emotional sobriety, we will just practice that radical acceptance when that happens. Take a deep breath, breathe through it, and orient yourself that even though I wasn't the first that they told, it's okay. It's not my preference, but they're still in my life and I'm in theirs. And so we release that contract for them so that we can truly be unconditional in that relationship and really love that person in that way. If not, if we have those contracts, then we're requiring them to meet us on our terms in order for them to be in relationship with us. And what we say with emotional sobriety is that when you do that, you cannot truly love that person, truly be there for them, because there's conditions with that contract saying you need to do it my way, or I'm withdrawing relationship from you, or I'm attacking you, or I'm freezing out and I'm ignoring you. So we don't want to do that. Those aren't effective ways of managing. And when you take my classes on, the other classes I have on emotional sobriety, we'll go into what is effective and ineffective and so forth. But for the purpose of today, I wanted to point out this first emotional need to you, which is the watch me need, where we have a vision, our eyes are on that person, where we know where they are, we're referencing them. Think about as adults, if you're at a party with your spouse or your partner or friend, and they're off and you kind of go, gosh, where are they? And all of a sudden you see them walk and they look for you and they're just like, hey, and they just kind of look at you and you guys make eye contact and then they walk on. It feels very good, very caring. You know that they're keeping track of you in this loving, supportive, connective way. However, if they never do that, if you're there for 3 hours and they never check to see where you were, if you're okay, you're likely to become angry and upset and be confused. And then they'll go, well, what's wrong? And say, well, you didn't ever check on me. You didn't know if I was okay or not. And then they say, well, you were fine. I figured if you were fine, you'd come and get me. Okay. Now, when we're practicing emotional sobriety, we do want to take care of that emotional need. And that means that if you do want them to reference and check on you, you can't control that in that moment, but you can go and check on them. So you go up and you check on them and say, hey, and then you can say, hey, will you just kind of check every 20 minutes or so? Let's just make sure we know where each other is. I'm feeling a little bit funky here. That would be really meaningful to me. And then you're communicating. But if they aren't doing that, we want to notice if you feel in that moment abandoned, neglected, and you're upset, then it's likely that you are having an activation or a trigger with that emotional need. And it's playing out that theme that you're being abandoned, you're being neglected from an earlier wound. So that's how triggers are. They get activated because we have an unhealed hidden wound from our developmental history that this moment is reminding us of. So if we had as children these situations where our parents didn't check on us, they didn't know where we were, and you felt neglected and abandoned in that moment, and now you're at this party as an adult with your partner, friend, and they're not checking on you, you're going to regress back into that memory, that emotion, and it's going to feel the same now. So take my class on the triggers and we'll go into depth about that. But for now, we're going to move on from here. So what I want you to do when you look at this and you think about the watch me need is reflect. How were my parents with that? Did they know where I was? Did they keep track of me? Did they know what was going on in my life and had that appropriate reference? Or did you have parents that when you were outside the house, you were just gone until nighttime? Or maybe it didn't even matter when you came back and that was all up to you. Whether you left or came back, there was no referencing for you. Or there were just very limited referencing. Also, if you grew up and you were at school events or at games or at big life moments, graduations and things like that, did you have parents that were there observing your experience, sharing in that experience with you if they were able? Sometimes we have parents working and they very much want to be there, but they can't. And a lot of times those parents will call and they'll follow via, tell me what's going on and where are you at and what was it like? And you're sharing, you're giving them a verbal picture of the experience. And that allows them that experience of like having a visual referencing of that moment where they can paint a picture and feel like they were part of it with you. So how are your parents with that? If your parents were watching and participating and celebrating all those moments and knowing what was going on for you, this is likely to be a very comfortable emotional need for you. Were your parents not there for you? Did they get mad at you when you would cry when they left and you didn't know where they were and they would punish you or why would you say that to me and make you feel bad about having this need? If that's the case, if they made you feel like something was wrong to want to have that reference, or you were totally neglected and abandoned with that emotional need, then what happens is we take that and we turn it off. And when we turn it off, then we tend to be blind to it, we tend to go numb to it, and then we just don't recognize it. So we don't even think to ask people where they're going or when they're going to be back or come. And we just don't even ask people questions. We just think, oh, they're fine. If they need me, they'll let me know. And that means that emotional need is not working properly. So to correct that, we want to begin to tell people goodbye. I'm going to, when you're going to be back home, be able to have some reference point for yourself of if you notice that you are getting distressed when someone else is coming and going, and you'd just like to know, so say, hey, I'd really like to know what's going on for you, and when you go on vacation, please let me know. When you come back, I'd love to know, because I just think it's so great you're doing all these things. And so you start inquiring and asking instead of waiting for the people to tell you. As a child, we waited for them to tell us. But as an adult, we can ask and we can take that initiative. That's the difference, is that as adults, when we're practicing emotional sobriety, we're noticing that we're having that emotional need, noticing that, oh my gosh, this person was gone. I just found out they went on vacation. Oh, it was sad for me. I would have liked to have known. And so you recognize inside you that you got activated, you got distressed. And now you have the language, you have the literacy of your emotional needs. So you go, oh yeah, I didn't know that they were gone, and they were gone. So what can I do? I can say, hey, I'd love to know when you have big life events, you go somewhere, please let me know. What you can't do is you can't make them do it. So in the event that they don't do it, then we have to radically accept that and release them from the contracts we hold from them. And if it is really a deal breaker, like you're in a relationship with someone and they just will not give this to you, you never know what they're doing, coming and going, it doesn't feel safe, then that might mean that that person is not ready to be in that level of relationship. And so at that moment, you might have to assess it and go through the pros and cons and all those kinds of things. So that's what I'm going to say with this. So reflect on this. What was this like for me growing up? And am I comfortable with this emotional need, or is this emotional need very uncomfortable for me? If it is, that means you had a wound with that emotional need and you have defenses around it, and you're likely to get triggered and activated around that emotional need when your loved ones cue you. It's going to be your shark music, and that doesn't mean they're wrong and bad for asking for that. It means that that's an area for us to heal and to challenge ourselves and begin to reprogram and get comfortable in meeting that emotional need and responding to it appropriately in ourselves and in others. So now we are going to go on to the second emotional need next.